The National Criminal Court is now in session. L'audience de la Cour pénale internationale est ouverte. Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Good morning. For the record, Mr. President, we are in open session.
Thank you very much. Appearances remain the same, I take it?
Yes, Your Honour, the same.
Your Honour, with one exception, at the back we have our trial support, Ms. Shalini Jairaj.
Mr. Katwa?
It remains the same, Mr. President.
And ours is the same.
Transcript used later so that we can see to the extent possible what the witness attested. The need to move her testimony into private session was necessitated by what was a clear, deliberate effort to intimidate this witness, veritable attack against the witness, comprising attempts to expose her identity, calling her very unkind names, and directing language towards. In these circumstances, the Chamber felt it necessary to protect the psychological well-being of the witness pursuant to Article 68(1) of the statute. Prosecutor, can you give an indication how long you anticipate, not testimony now, proposal for the public redacted version of the testimony can be done? How long do you think that?
Please bear with me 1 minute.
Thank you.
Would Tuesday next week be in order, Your Honours?
Can you do better than that?
Possibly Monday.
Today being Friday.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Transcribers that this has. Simply of redaction. There are behind the OTP. Just blank out and redact, and in fact it should be possible, given that we have breaks, for it to be done at the end of the day. Quite honest about it, Your Honour, because one wants to look next week as well. So I would ask that the prosecution organise themselves so that public redacted versions are ready at the end of the day, or the very latest the next morning. At the very latest the next morning. Your Honour, the other possibility is at the end of every session, the bench may wish to give a synopsis themselves regarding what's transpired. Your Honour, that's the first proposal. On the second issue, we're not seeking to revisit the protective measures relating to this witness at all. But, Your Honour, with your leave, we'd be most grateful if Mr. Ruto can address the bench just for 2 minutes on this issue, because it may well inform the bench's decisions that are currently pending. Your Honour, he hasn't spoken on that issue. He'll only be a couple of minutes, but in my respectful submission, it would add to the deliberations that have to take place.
On what issue?
Your Honour, on the issue of the impact of the closed sessions and the balancing considerations that should be in mind by the bench as we go forward. So, Your Honour, it'll be quite a short statement to the bench. And, Your Honour, you will note yesterday he has never abused the permissions that the court has so kindly granted him. So I would ask that the bench allow the client to speak and address the bench for a limited period.
Mr. Can, we have, the bench has been generous in allowing Mr. Ruto to address the court. But this is a matter that the chamber has ruled upon already. It is not necessary to hear Mr. Ruto on this one.
Yes. Well, Mrs. Ruto and a daughter in court. There's a family back home, a recently graduated lawyer. And they're all in the dark. Your Honour, just in relation to has endured being publicly named by Ocampo, a summons, and very serious allegations. In the exercise of discretion, Your Honours, I would ask you to consider that there is a real interest in Mr. Ruto having the allegations against him being made in public, and so that also the veracity of those allegations can also be tested. Your Honours, life is a gift of God, and we don't know how long this case will take.
Mr. Khan, I think you're really litigating the issue. The point I take from you is there are interests outside who really want to know what is being said by way of testimony. Is that not it?
Indeed, Your Honour. And also, the point I was trying to say is that, particularly with the mother, who's of age, and of course Mr. Ruto wants to reassure his mother and that that this is a son to be proud of, not a son to be ashamed of. And, Your Honour, a decision may be rendered whenever. It could be 1 year, it could be more. As the trial unfolds, every person observing can make their own assessment regarding the veracity of the case. And, Your Honour, that's the only matter that I would wish the bench to consider when deciding the pending application of the prosecution.
Pending application?
Your Honour, this uniform protection as we go forward.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Khan, for that. And for that reason that we're making, putting the extra burden on the prosecution to do their best to make sure that the public redacted versions are released as quickly as we can by way of their proposal, and then the chamber will, of course.
I'm most grateful, but Your Honour, in relation to that matter, a lot of people that are interested don't know English or French. Transcripts are produced only in those two official languages. And the advantage if the bench wishes the bench consider that as to the full redacted transcripts. The only point.
That seems to me a useful proposal. The chamber will consider what, if there's any particular difficulty in doing that. I wouldn't think there is, but we would.
Your Honour, can I just say, if it helps, I do know that other judges, for example, Judge Parker in the ICC, whenever we went into closed session, when we came back, he would give a quick summary of what had transpired, just so that the public get a taste of what had taken place. I'm grateful.
We will return to you. As I said, that seems a reasonable proposal. We will. So, on that note, we will now go into Mr. Keegan-Cartwell Rose.
Mr. President, the first thing I wish to say is I would very kindly request also for audience on issues as substantial as the ones which have just been dealt with in future when the position of the defense is being invited. Kindly, Mr. President. Mr. President, the issue has been dealt with as between the prosecution and the first accused defense, and agreement has been arrived at that redacted transcripts can be available the following morning, and that's acceptable to my side. We would only pray on our part for a rider that the court maintains some amount of supervision of the redactions done by the prosecution, so that they. And the first understanding we have is that the protective measure to have the proceedings with respect to this witness does not necessarily apply to the other witnesses. We, however, will pray. The proceedings are not conducted in a way, as it were, Mr. President. It is known that the allegations made against my client have been treated confidentially all along. To the be aware of the case against him, he is not allowed to tell his family members, he is not allowed to tell his acquaintances, he is not allowed to tell anybody else. When these proceedings come to a point where they are also conducted in a closed session, then it means everybody who is aware that he's on trial doesn't get to know what are the allegations against him.
Mr. Kigen-Katwa, we have not come to the point of making a ruling on the protective measure of any other witness to the extent that we've done in the revised ruling on this particular witness. As we were at pains to explain, there were special circumstances attending this witness's appearance in court in the course of a testimony that necessitated the revision of the protective measures in relation to her. When we get to other witnesses, we will see what the situation is. It is hoped that there will not be a repeat of what happened to this first witness. That's all that can be said now. And in the ruling of the chamber will then depend on the circumstances presented in the future. But when
the closed proceedings of suggesting no rights, Mr. President, in terms of having his situation understood by people who matter to him. And he would matter to him. And he would have really wished proceedings are conducted in a situation that other people can have audience. He, in the balancing act that is called to protective measures for the remainder of the witnesses, he is also be including his psychological concerns. Thank you, Mr. President, and your honors.
very much. And I thank you for not recognizing you earlier. That was a clear omission, Mr. Kigen-Katwa.
I'm obliged, President, and your honors.
Your Honours, if that concludes all preliminary matters, may I request that the witness...
Thank you. Yes, indeed. Court officer, we will now go into closed session to bring in the witness and then private session thereafter for our testimony.